and from my own experience is because the woman is playing with the cookies. She's playing with the cookies. And so they saying take away with the cookies. And so that man will agree to submit because the cookies jar is missing. And you can't do it. You can't do it. You get
And
to the point where you say, I don't give a darn. I'm going to be a man.
and
Yeah.
I just want to explain for my audience what he talked about the cookies. I believe you are talking about a woman who is withholding sex. We can say sex
Amen.
channel.
Amen.
And we all adults here. She's withholding the relations unless you do what I tell you to do. You don't
Mhm.
get any. Okay. Welcome, everyone. It's me, Linda B. Thank you all so much for joining me here tonight. Now, tonight we're having a conversation regarding relationships. We're talking about good Black men who want a good Black woman. I have my panel that's going to be joining me right now. First, I have Renee Suzanne. Hello, Renee.
Hello, Linda.
Hello.
Nice to see you.
Her channel is Renee Suzanne. And then I have Mark Johnson of WTF For Real. Hey there.
Hey, Miss Linda B.
Hello. And finally, I have Kev Inver, aka Kevin Zachary of The Real Fights.
Yes.
Welcome, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Good morning.
All right. Thank you guys so much for joining me here today. So, you know what we're talking about, right? We're talking about good Black men who want a good Black woman. And I want it to be very clear for everybody that is watching, that will be watching. It didn't matter to me what color anybody was that joined in on the discussion. I was like, everyone is welcome because a lot of things that we talk about Black men, Black women, they're the same with most groups. We're looking for similar things. So I want to just, maybe we run across some things that may be a little bit harder. We're going to talk about that. But yeah, so the question is, well, it's not a question, it is, but good Black men looking for a good Black woman. Who wants to start off first? I got two Black men here. So let's just join in the conversation. Who wants to start?
One of the guys do.
I think Kev's a good place to start just because he left the country.
Yes, Kev, you said I gotta leave the country to find me a woman. And you said I need a passport. You went to the Philippines, and I know they got all kind of melanins over there in the Philippines.
They do. They do. They do. Well, listen, here's the thing. If the subject is finding a good Black woman, what basically what I was looking for for a very short period of time is I was looking for a woman that would just bring some godly attributes, some I guess they call it traditional attributes, just be kind, sweet, help me to do what I'm trying to do, and we can make it happen. And I'm sorry, I'm gonna bring a bad word into this one. I need you to submit. I need you to submit. You know what I'm saying? If I'm gonna be your husband, I need you to submit.
Absolutely.
And so what happened was I was sitting over in the United States, and I checked out a few, and I said, wait a minute here. This is just too hard. This is too hard. So I had an uncle tell me, he say, man, I got me a Filipino wife and they do all that. You ain't got to worry about it. It's on steroids over there. So you know what? I hopped on a plane, went on over, and boom. That's what I went with. And so I don't believe in that you have to have necessarily a Black woman. I don't believe you have to have a white woman. I don't believe you have to have an Asian woman. I believe it's the right one, not the white one, not the Black one, not the Asian one.
Right.
It's the right. So
And I just want to
that's
say,
what I did.
I agree with you. I'm not one to focus on skin color. I say it all the time on my channel. I mean, a lot of people, some people, they don't like it when you go outside your ethnic group. They get a little their feelings a little bit. And
Mhm.
I mean, I used to be a little bit like that, but it's God delivered me from that. I'm just like, you know what? Y'all just need
Mhm.
to make sure it's a woman. Okay. Just make
Mhm.
sure we had that discussion. And I'm okay with it.
Mhm.
My husband has two cousins. And I told you guys
Mhm.
in our coaching session that they went to Africa and got them some women.
Amen.
And
Amen.
one of them, I don't know about the other one, but the one of them is extremely happy. Extremely
Right.
happy. No
Yeah,
problems.
they
Mhm.
thick over there.
Huh?
They thick over there.
They think
Well, I'm cool. I'm cool with that too. I'm cool with that. I mean,
I'm
one of my
cool with that.
sons, yeah, one of my sons is very young, and he likes women with a lot of melanin, but unfortunately, he would not go with a U.S. woman. Not that he was not trying to,
Mhm.
but he went with a Caribbean woman. You know, she was Caribbean, but she had all the attributes that I just talked about, and he jumped on
Soft,
that. You know,
sweet,
so yeah,
submissive, and kind, And I gotta
help,
say,
help,
I
help,
gotta
help, help.
yeah, I gotta say, submission in certain parts of the world because of feminism, to me in America and Western Europe, is the problem. I know of,
Mhm.
I've read that European men go to Africa for them. They go to Africa. So they're not looking, no one's looking for a particular color. They just want a particular type. People that got
Mhm.
this just want a type that is submissive and sweet. We're not talking about you're going to be the kind of man that's going to drag her by the hair or anything. I don't want people to think that
Mhm.
because feminism has taught women that marriage is oppressive and you got to just
Mhm.
I'm a woman and I don't need a man. Okay. American black women do have some of that problem. I'm just going to keep it 100. I don't
A
spare
monkey on the back.
feelings.
A monkey. There's a monkey on the back.
Yeah, and I'm just not going to spare anybody's feelings. I'm a black woman. I just got to call it how I see it. And we got
Mhm.
a lot of sweet ones. I really submit to my husband. It seems like conservative women do that more. But I'm just saying, the liberals are like, I don't know. But MJ, I want to talk to you because I really wanted you on this show, and I am so glad you were able to join. Thank you guys, all of you. But you specifically said that you want a black woman.
Well, so my experience dating wise and even being married was with a black woman. And
Hmm.
so I've dated outside, I've dated Latinas, but
Hmm.
that's about as far as I went. So I don't necessarily can say I have experience dating or have experienced dating, anyone outside of that. I just have an affinity for melanin, and
Hmm.
as Kev told me in a separate conversation that over in the Philippines, they got melanin. So I mean, I know all that, and I have my brother tells me all the time that I should consider dating outside of my quote unquote race, because for me, I don't necessarily look at color the same way that a lot of people do. I don't play that race stuff. So,
Hmm.
but I just never experienced it. I think I would say that would be my preference, on the dating scene.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm definitely open to,
Okay.
maybe exploring that. So,
Okay.
and the issue comes down to, um, you know, uh, I was and this is not like a political talk, so to speak, but, my values are more conservative. Within the last, I would say in the last 5 years, more so specifically. But I also was in the church for a long time when early on as an adult. And so that whole idea of, what Kevin said about submission and that word submissive is, at this day and age, it's so triggering. As a matter of fact, it
Mhm.
was triggering back then, you
Yeah.
know? And so I think that's where you kind of fall into it, the quote unquote modern woman. And
Mhm.
I don't really have an issue with a woman being able to do whatever she wants to do. But I think the ideal, what people portray in society, has really kind of tainted the dating pool, if you will.
Mhm. Yeah, it's been hard because you did mention that you're conservative. Okay,
I
so
am.
you have a certain viewpoint. This is not a political channel, so I'm trying not to go there.
Mhm.
You said you're looking for someone who shares your same values, and 92% of Black women voted Democrat. And you are finding it difficult to, in that way, because you would prefer someone to agree with you concerning that, MJ. So,
I would say that I think one of the things that I experienced, and it's not that I haven't come across women that were sweet and kind and really have the assets, so to speak, that I would be looking for. But one thing that I can say 100% of the time is the minute political views start to come into conversation, it is a mismatch.
Jesus.
I mean, a complete mismatch. I mean, I've one of the first questions that I get typically is, who did you vote for?
wow.
And I don't, and I'm not one to bite my tongue, keep it real. And it's always like, well, I'm probably not gonna match with you very well because of your
Who would
viewpoints.
you vote for? I'm just curious.
Who did I vote for? I voted for Trump.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Okay. All right. All right. Wow.
Yeah,
When I was raised not to, you don't talk, you don't ask anybody
I
who
get
they
that
voted
question all the
for.
time, to be honest with you.
and do you guys remember
Mhm.
I
that
didn't get that
show?
lesson. I'm sorry. I didn't get that lesson. I'm sorry. I apologize.
What show was that? Love is Blind or Married at First Sight? I don't remember which one it was. Love is Blind. But the women did not were liberal, and they did, and the men were conservative, and they want, and the women dropped
Oh.
the men because they said, "I'm sorry, I believe in pro-choice, this, and you're not that. You're a nice guy, but no." And it was two women, one black and one white, and they both had great guys from what it appeared to be. One of the guys seemed not masculine enough, but I don't know. That's just me. But I'm like, he could be a little bit more, But in any event, they were liberal and the men were conservative. And it's a good point I want to make is that in every ethnic group, not just black people, every ethnic group, the men are more conservative than the women are. I mean, and that show proved it. Right
I mean, the
there.
thing is, most black folks, I mean, they might not admit it, but their values are conservative, just at its baseline.
They some of
Just in,
don't maybe don't even realize it.
and don't even
Yeah.
know it. I mean,
Mhm.
Yeah.
honestly, and it's funny because I was raised in the South, and I was I was up north in the city, for 30 years before I moved back south, and one of the things that I really didn't like about, and I was in Connecticut for 30 years, and it's a
Mm.
very extremely liberal state.
Hmm.
Mhm.
And, I grew up in the South. My parents were Democrats. And again, this isn't political, but just kind of a little background. My whole thing is we were always taught it didn't matter who was on the ticket, just vote Democrat. And so when I married my kid's my kid's mother, her dad was he went into politics. He ended up being one of Connecticut state's representatives. And so I was around a lot of politicians, and when I met him, he was a Republican, and he switched over to Democrat to run for to get
Mm.
that seat. And so
Yeah.
he went, even though he was a conservative, his whole nature changed into being really on the Democratic side. And so
Hmm.
I just kind of fed into that whole, I was already there, but then I got deeper and deeper into it. Um, but it wasn't until probably about maybe 5 or 6 years ago, I was having a conversation with my brother, and we just started discussing politics. And he asked me about government, and we just went deep, deep, deep into it. And when I realized I wanted less government, involved in my life, he said, "Well, you're a He said, "Well, you're a Republican," and and that has like such a very negative connotation to it in and of itself for Black folks. I was appalled by the thought of it, until I did my homework, and then come to find out, all these many years, I didn't even know my twin brother was a conservative. So, it was one of those it was one of those eye opening moments, and so I took a step back and looked at how I manage and run my own life, and it's
Mhm.
everything that I stand for is on the conservative side. And not for nothing, I raised three daughters. I have three adult daughters.
Mhm.
So everything that they believe in on the right, I mean, sorry, on the left, is against what I believe.
Mhm. Yeah, I think people need to realize that because, all of our friends that my husband and I grew up with, I live in Georgia, deep South, grew up in a Baptist church. Everything is conservative. And I went up to New York to pursue acting and a whole new world. I'm like, wow, these people are out here loving on each other in the open.
Very
I
different.
was used to seeing that. I was like, wow.
Yeah, yeah.
It was just
It's
different
crazy.
because I live in a smaller
It's
town
different.
and I was just not used to it. It was just so crazy. But so you're saying that women ask you, MJ, who did you vote for?
Yeah, they tend to lean into, the whole idea of, having a person of color as president, which makes no never mind for me because I didn't vote for Obama the second time.
Hmm.
Um, even then I didn't vote for him. The first time I did because I think we all did, but the second time I didn't.
No.
And yeah, I think I remember when I did that. But yeah, I mean, I get that question quite often. And knowing statistically what that looked like, especially this last cycle, I knew immediately when I saw those numbers that, man, it's going to be pretty tough out here for me
Yeah,
specifically.
right,
Seeking
right.
seeking a mate. So
Yeah, maybe you should go to some turning point events or some what
Yes.
turning point. What's the other one? CPAC or something? I don't know.
Yeah.
Just go to those
Mhm.
events right
I,
there.
I
And
never
just
I never considered it, but you probably got a point there.
yeah, Google it and see when their events are. Just fly over there and stand
Yeah,
outside and have it look nice.
Mhm.
because my first thought was, man, where the hell is all the all
Stand
the
there
all
and
the black
smile.
all the
Stand
black
there and
conservative
smile.
women at? You know what I'm
Have your
saying?
Turning Point
smell good.
USA.
Have your
Mhm.
smell good cologne on. You got your nice shoes,
Mm,
lined them up. You trimmed your beard. You
mm,
got it edged, and you just standing
mm,
outside.
yeah,
That's hilarious.
Mhm.
I'm
mm.
just being crazy, y'all. I'm so crazy.
Yeah, that's a great idea, Linda B.
Mhm.
Or else go
Mm.
to Africa and stand up under a palm tree. I don't know what to tell you.
I mean, I do. That's on my list. I do wanna visit Africa. I might visit the Philippines if Kev stop playing.
No, right?
I got a
Wow.
I
Absolutely.
got a I
Listen,
have an uncle that lives there, so I mean, I'll go out there.
Y'all just cool.
hey,
So
I
Renee,
told you there are people darker than me in the Philippines that are Filipino. A lot of people don't know that
Mhm.
that's really their origin people are really dark. It's just
Mhm.
that there's just a push in schools in their society to get a lot lighter. They have
Oh.
skin color, little the little woman stuff to put on their skin to make their skin lighter. They also a lot of times may want to marry someone that's lighter so that their kids can be lighter. It's that's the push. And
Wow.
it's unfortunate because you have to embrace who you are. When you were talking, MJ, you made a lot of great points. Um, now I will say this. You said black woman. Sometimes I have issues with that because I believe it should be African American woman, African American man. Why? Because people from Africa that live in the States, they're different. Their
Oh,
concepts, a lot of time,
absolutely.
their thinking is a lot different. And so I think what has happened with a lot of African American women, where you're talking about, conservative men like myself and like MJ, you know, they've been trained, taught, propagandized to think in a certain way
Yeah.
that if a man is conservative, that's red flag,
mm,
and it's a lot to get around, and
It
I'm gonna
is.
give you one more little scenario that happened to myself because this was when I made the decision after my first marriage. I was in the market, and I know I was looking good. I mean, I know I was looking good, and I went into I went into the store, right?
yes,
You
tell
got to
us
have
how you
confidence.
do
You got to have confidence. I was looking good. I'm serious. I had on my little outfit. I'd already gotten, like, I don't know how many compliments that day. That's necessarily normal. You just get from everybody. So I went into the place to get me a bacon, egg, and cheese biscuit. I like me some bacon, egg, and cheese biscuit. So went in there. There was a lady at the counter, and it was one of my clients' stores, okay, as well. And so the lady saw me, and she made her little compliment or something that she said, and I said, "Thank you. Yeah, I like the way I look today too." And she had a problem with that. She got attitude. I ain't say you was all that. I ain't say you was all that. See, look, that helped me make the decision. I got to go. I can't deal with it. Listen, what's wrong with me thinking that I look good? Don't you want me to think I look good? What are we talking about here? So,
Yeah,
that
yeah.
kind of stuff like that. I'm not with all the head movements and all that. I'm no, that's just too much for me. So
Yeah,
that's my little.
Renee, we haven't heard a lot from you, Renee. I want you to speak, honey. Renee Suzanne, what?
Oh, um, a couple things. The real quick thing that I was thinking is that I don't see a problem with anyone wanting to date within or outside of their race. I don't think it's prejudice. I don't think it's discriminatory. I think everyone has preferences.
Mm-hmm.
We're human. We
Mm-hmm.
have preferences. What looks good to somebody, one person isn't necessarily going to look good to somebody else. And then a way of behaving is going to jive better with certain people than it is going to with other people. So I just don't. I don't think. I don't think there should. Honestly, I don't think it should be as big of a deal overall.
Yeah.
If it's a big deal to you, it's a big deal to you, but that's nobody else's. Never mind, And the other thing I have to say is that I grew up with what I didn't know for a long time, was a really racist father who very much kept me living and going to school away from anybody that didn't look like me. And it wasn't until I had gotten married at 19 and probably about 21, lived in an apartment complex where there were either African American and or Black individuals. And I had lots of questions. I wanted to know. I'm like, I said, I'm not trying to offend anybody, but could you tell me how come your hair looks so much different today than when you came into the apartment complex gym yesterday and you had a whole different thing going on? How does that work? Like after I saw her like 20 times in there, I got up the guts to ask her that, right?
What did she say? I gotta hear this.
She straight up said, she stopped that treadmill and she told me. She said, well, we Black women, some of us can grow our hair, some of us can't grow over our hair, some of us like our hair, some of us don't like our hair. And it is expensive to change your hairstyles, and she told me what a weave was and she, what this, that, and the other. And I'm like,
you feeling like you got educated that day, didn't you?
I got educated, and what I didn't say was, sounds like an awful lot of work. But okay. Sounds like an awful lot of work. Yeah, it sounds like an awful lot of work, but you do you, honey. You do you.
You do you.
And yeah. And so
I like what you said, Renee. When you said if it's look at MJ and Kale just giggling because you could have got the wrong sister too.
Oh, but I told you I waited 20 sometimes with her coming in there before I said a word.
You stepped into a trap.
Yeah. So you spoke to her, to her about 20 times first. Hey, how you doing?
Right, and she was there by herself. Yeah, she was there by herself. She was there by herself when I broached the subject.
Okay.
There wasn't nobody else in there.
I'm just being honest, you get the wrong one. But listen, what you said about what you really said about what's important to you, like you don't have a problem with people who want to date only in their race. Like
What?
my husband never dated outside. He just never thought about it. He just never thought about it. And he just has that preference. And it's not racist. It's just a
Right.
preference.
Right.
And I wanted to ask MJ because I think I misunderstood you in our coaching call. I think I misunderstood you because I thought you said, I remember you saying you addicted to melanin. And I somehow twisted that to mean the woman had to be black, but you like some melanin. Okay.
Not me, like not this glowing me. That's okay. And that's okay.
No, I like what you said.
Well, he's only gone out of his race one time, just one time. So I think that's addicted to melanin. We don't even know what shade she was.
But I just feel like I had a question. I wanted to know if you, MJ, was it a physical attraction thing? The reason I say this because of what Renee brought up, or was it how you were raised thing? Because it depended on what your answer was going to be. Because if you said you just attracted to people who look a certain way, I would tell you to change to try to be attracted to something that you don't like. I would never tell a person that you like what you like. Or, if it was because of how you were raised, I would say get the lip. But if your eyes just really like something, you just like what you like.
So yeah, no, that's a great point. I never really considered it until you just mentioned it. But I do have a distinct memory, and I'm sure my brother would remember this. We were helping our dad work on things. My dad was a jack of all trades, so he was always doing something, and he always had us working with him, helping him do whatever. And I remember me and my brother was having a conversation while my dad was like, I think he was fixing the toilet in the bathroom, and we were standing outside the door to pass some tools. And I think I said something to the effect of, "Man, I want a white girl." And I remember my dad lashed out at me, and like it was like the worst thing that you could ever say in life. I have that distinct memory. I don't know if that necessarily shaped my thinking in terms of, what I wanted in a woman, but I definitely remember that very distinctly. I never forgot it. And, what I was saying when we was in our group was that I have an affinity for, women of color. I just, it's just, one thing I always say, my brother and I, we talk, daily. And one thing that I always say is that Black women are undefeated. They just have this beauty about them. But I always have a caveat to that by thinking and saying, but their attitudes suck. You know what I mean? Like, to find one that really fits our, everything that we want in a
80-20.
woman. Yeah. And I definitely apply 80-20 to that. But I always find myself, striking out when it comes to that, because one thing that I seek above all else is kindness. I'm a really chill dude, and so I'm always super positive. I don't really like negative. So if you're a negative person, and not for nothing, that's kind of just how the world is kind of built at this stage. Everyone is stressed and in their feelings about something. But it's just one thing I just can't get past is really negativity and bad attitudes. It's a definite deal breaker for me. But I always find myself rolling right back to Black women, and not that I have an issue with it. I love my sisters, but in the last couple of years, I have definitely considered the idea of dating outside of my race. I don't know what
we ain't got any better attitudes.
Why?
We ain't got.
Why you consider it, MJ? Why?
We ain't got any better attitudes. We ain't got any better attitudes.
Oh, I'm sure about that, but I don't know. You messing me up, Renee, because now I'm like, there's no hope if that's the case.
No, it's a person. It's individual.
I just told you what to do.
Individual. It's individual. But to better your chances, yes. Get yourself all done up and go stand out some side. Go be part of conservative events.
Yes, I told you, man. I told you.
He that findeth a wife.
You look
okay.
So
you gotta go find them. You gotta go where they at, man.
Exactly.
You trying to get me to come out to the Philippines, and I'm down for that, brother. I got a passport. You kidding me?
Well, see, I didn't say that. I said, listen.
You can go to CPAC.
It's a great idea. it's a great idea, but Linda gave an idea. If you don't want to
Mhm.
pay to come out here, okay, it's not that expensive.
You can
But if you
stay
don't
in
want to pay,
America
go to
and stand
what'd you say, the
outside the
CPAC?
Turning Point.
Yeah, go to
Or go
Turning Point.
point.
You
Yep.
know,
Yep.
you know what I'm saying. Just got to make sure.
Mhm.
Listen, you got to make sure they real though, because I heard.
Oh no, I
You
need
know,
birth certificates, baby pictures. I need all that.
I know, right?
no, I ain't talking about that. I'm talking about that they are real conservative, have that
Yeah.
mindset. You know what I'm
Yeah, I
saying?
mean,
Because
people can tell you anything, so you're right
you know,
about that.
yeah,
You're right
Yeah.
about that.
absolutely. Still got to vet it. Still
Yeah,
got to vet it.
gotta vet for sure. But I wanted to share with you
Mhm.
all a clip from Pop the Balloon. This is a
Oh man,
man.
that's
This is a man that is, they usually have black folks on the show. And I'm just gonna share this clip, and he's finding, trying to find a woman. And I notice what they say a lot, some of the same things, and I'm just gonna share this clip with you all. Hopefully, you enjoy this. All right, here we go. Let's see how that looks on the screen. All right, very good.
Oh
Hello.
goodness.
And what's your name?
My name is James. How are you?
I'm good. How are you, James?
Wonderful.
All right. And how old are you?
37.
And what do you do?
I'm called 9 Round Kickboxing in Atlanta, Georgia.
Very cool. What are some things I could do for fun?
Work out, obviously. Travel. I like to shoot, own a few guns. I like a relaxing night at home. I'm a real simple man.
Okay.
Yeah.
And now, what do you look for in a woman?
Black. So all y'all fit the bill.
Everybody here.
Somebody who takes care of themselves mentally and physically. Somebody with a great sense of humor. Somebody who likes to travel. Obviously, I know that's real cliche, but I like to travel as well. But I'm a simple dude.
Okay. And now, what are some of your deal breakers?
The complete antithesis of that.
Of
So, like,
everything.
if you do not work out, it's not going to work.
Okay.
You don't take care of your mental. Pray, read, those things. Or if you don't have any ambition,
Mhm.
If you're stagnant, it's not going to work.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So,
All right, I'm just going to stop it right there. I'm just going to stop it right there. What do you guys feel about what he said?
I don't think there's a single thing wrong with what he said, because if I was there, I would have said the same exact thing.
Really?
Because ambition, for me is big. You don't have to necessarily have a business mentality like myself, or have a business or anything like that. If you do, great, but have a hobby or something. Have something that you're passionate about. And for me, I feel like that's super important in a relationship. You know, um,
Yeah, for sure.
if I was to meet someone that was podcasting or a creative or something to that effect, I think that would be pretty dope.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you maybe
The
can
mental.
podcast, because the lady Arlette, her husband has a show, I think, or he does music, and they kind of combine together. And I think that's wonderful. They combine their talents, and I think that's great. So, what did you think, Kev?
The mental part, at first I was like, oh, he's about to go into this mental health stuff, but he didn't say that. He just said mental, and then he said pray.
Pray.
And
Mhm.
I was like, oh, I love it. That, because that's going to help your mental, and so, yeah,
Mhm.
you got to be right up here, because some of the issues that we already brought up are because your mental is not right. It's off. You're meditating on the wrong stuff. So I absolutely agree so far with what he said, except for it doesn't necessarily have to be black. It can be black. I love black. It can be white, Asian, Puerto
Mhm.
Rican, whatever the case may be. But
And
I agree with
I
everything.
was just trying to find a clip really quick.
And I just chalked that up to he has preferences.
Yeah,
Right.
some people just have
Mhm.
preference. Like some
Mhm.
white people like blondes, redheads, and brunettes.
Exactly. Oh,
I mean,
exactly.
people like slim women, thick women, big breasted, big butts. I see them on
Mhm.
there sometimes with BBLs. I say, girl, you just went too far with that.
Yeah, I don't do BBLs, but I like them. I like them. I take them thick. You know what I mean? But
Can
that
somebody
Well, can we keep it real though for a minute though? I mean, look, all of the people that's on your podcast this morning are from the South, pretty much. So, and I want to keep it real. Now, this may have not been your reality, but the reality is this: we are taught as African Americans in the South that if a man goes and marries outside of his race, he is a traitor. He's betrayed Black women. I mean, that's what we grew up with. I mean, every time that happened, let an athlete, any of the big time
Oh yeah.
athletes, they
Yeah.
You're a
to marry out that
sellout.
race.
You're all
Oh,
kinds
that's
of, yep.
a good man
Yeah.
going over here. You get it every single time. Well, we did when we were younger, and so you grew up
Oh,
with this
still.
mentality of it might still be in there, but I don't be listening to those kind of folks. But anyway, the bottom line, when you're coming up, you got to hear that they're telling you, oh, that's no good, and you just got to run to this one or that one. So you grow up with that, so you have that mentality, and some of that. So I would say that some of that, yeah, melanin is great, but melanin is wonderful. But some of it, I think, maybe, hey, you've been taught this way. Is your family going to accept? Is your family going to accept somebody that's of a different race, or are they going to poo-poo on her?
Yeah, but I
I
think
gotta
that's more
say,
important. I think not to cut you, Linda B, but yeah, worrying about, like, I think for me at my age, the last thing I'm worried about is what my family thinks about who I'm with. I think when I was younger, it probably mattered a little more. But at this stage of the game, I don't care what you think. If I love her, that's just what it is,
it's just what it
And
is. And it made
and
me
that's
think
not to say. Oh, I'm sorry, Linda B. Go ahead.
okay. No, it just made me think about what me and my sister were taught. I grew up in Georgia, central Georgia, and in a smaller town. And my parents was like, they can actually be any ethnicity. My sister had an Asian boyfriend for a while that wanted to marry her, but she said no. But in any event, they say he can be any race, but not white. He cannot be white. And I was like, I was kind of like, okay. I ain't listened to him because I snuck around, whatever. That was before Jesus. But we were taught that. We were taught no white boys, don't bring them here. They can be Asian, they can be Puerto Rican, they can be mixed. Black got to be somewhere in the back corner pocket. And
Wow.
but they just can't be
Look,
white. And now I feel like my mom doesn't care because I have a daughter, all the boys that like her white. Everybody like her is a white guy. And what in love, what now. So we don't care. Me and my husband do not care. But I was brought up that way. Like, don't bring nobody like that over here. No. I grew up in the 90s.
Yeah.
And
I think it's a cultural thing.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I did say that I was raised for what I thought did not know for a long time was a, very prejudiced father. When it came time to dating, all of us, he had 3 daughters, and almost all my cousins were girls. And all it took was for one of my cousins to get a Black African American boyfriend, and you would have thought the whole family blew up. And I was just like, what is the problem here? I don't. I'm just trying to figure out by watching and listening, and they're all like, you can't see him again, and you just like as if he had done something, and it just didn't make any sense to me. And I just thought, I mean, I may not know I may not have known then. I probably don't still obviously know maybe the cultural things that might be different, but it just didn't seem to make sense if it's between 2 people and they're jiving with each other, then that's what it's about.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I'm guilty of that. Like, I raised 3 daughters, and one of the things that I told them most of their life was, don't bring a white boy home. And so I did. And so, like, my oldest daughter, when she went to prom, it was a big deal because she went to prom with a white dude. And if I could find the pictures, I'd show you, because I didn't have a smile on my face at all. I had
my dad just would have said no. My dad would have let me go.
And so
there would have been none of it.
Yeah. So my wife at the time, her stepmom, I remember we went through this thing where we would tell her. I remember she was showing her pictures of Morris Chestnut, and like, what's wrong with these dudes? You know what I mean? So it was so funny because that I'm guilty of that. Now my granddaughter is a biracial, child. So I think the older you get, the more wiser you get, the more you come up off of like different idiocies like that.
It doesn't really matter at the end of the day.
Right.
I guess some people it does matter to them because they have a strong preference. If your preference is that
Preference.
strong, if your preference is that strong, I would never tell you to go outside of your preference because it's so strong in some people. Maybe not you guys here, but in some people, it's like, I gotta have this though. And I would never tell somebody, if your preference is that strong, you gotta date outside your race when they're, because I don't want you looking over your shoulders at somebody else that is your preference and you with somebody else. Or you really wishing, I sure wish you had something, but you don't say it. I'm just like, that's a horrible way to live. So don't
It is.
anybody
It
watch
is.
it. If your preference is that strong, please stick with your preference. Okay,
Yeah.
but if you can be flexible, which I recommend flexibility in these days.
Oh
and
yeah.
if you need to go to a certain country, get your passport ready, stand there, and look good and smell good.
And you'll find variety everywhere though, right? You'll find
Yes,
variety
yes.
amongst the Filipino women
Yes,
as much as
different
the melanin. Well, not even just the melanin. It's going to be personality. It's going to be whatever.
Well,
And
it's a lot of things. I think it's softness. I think a lot of times what we experience
Softness.
here is a lot of hard women. And I've had conversations with women, and I've told them, I don't want a hard woman. You know what I'm saying? I want them soft. And if you're gonna be soft around me, you want to be hard at work, go ahead and do that. But when you're around me, I don't want to see any of it. That I can't. I'm not gonna compete with you. And so I think
So you don't want
that's
a hard
just.
woman. He don't want a hard woman.
Nah, because it's gonna be a tough, because I'm not no pushover dude. Like, I'm sorry, like, it's not gonna fly over here.
Yes,
And
some men do become pushovers when the woman has a very strong alpha personality. They'll just kowtow. I didn't marry a man that would let me do that.
it's a problem. It's not conducive to a healthy relationship.
It's not. And one of the things my husband said was he likes women that have soft demeanors, soft voices,
Right.
just really like feminine. And he said one of the things he liked about me was, how I fix myself up. I'm very girly. I don't know if you don't know that, but I'm just
we know, Linda B.
We see you, girl. We see you.
Linda.
This is who I am. I would never. I just don't like anything boyish on me. Everything gotta be lip gloss, big earrings, some heels on. My nails gotta be done. But this is my hair, though. This is my hair.
Well, what it is, Linda, is a lot of men. What it is with men, and I'm talking about real men that have learned that they need to, be okay with being a man, be okay with being masculine. They don't want to bump up against somebody that looks like a woman, but is acting like a man. They don't want that because if you're coming at me like a man, our first retort, our first instinct is we gonna have to handle this like a man. You ain't gonna be punking me. What we doing here? You getting your voice low? Did I tell you that you can't? No. Just what you talking about? What? Hold on. Wait. Stop. Whoa. Wait a minute. That's a problem. And a real man is not willing to deal with that. On the reverse end, what you were talking about as far as the, softer men or men that yield or submit to that type of woman, they just basically doing like Adam. And a lot of times the reason they're doing that is because, and this is in my own opinion and from what I heard and from my own experience, is because the woman is playing with the cookies. She's playing with the cookies. And so they saying take away with the cookies. And so that man will agree to submit because the cookies jaw is missing. And you can't do it. You can't do it. You get to the point where you say, I don't give a darn. I'm going to be a man.
And I just want to explain for my audience what he talked about, the cookies. I believe you are talking about a woman who is withholding sex. We can say
Amen.
channel.
Amen.
And we all adults here. She's withholding the relations unless you do what I tell you to do. You don't get any. Okay, you sleep on the couch.
And sometimes it's implied. It might even be implied. So you can't. No, we can't be dealing with that
I feel
stuff.
better now because I was feeling like a tough woman, just a little too much, and then I realized, well, my husband doesn't meet me head on like that. He just looks at me as like, something going on with you today? Is everything okay? Is everything okay? And then we, and then usually I just melt like, oh my goodness, I just, give me a hug and, and then I just melt into butter and, and he's, a lot of people, I think even when my teenagers were growing up, they're like, yeah, we know who wears the pants in the house. That's just because I was bossy.
Oh,
I was extremely bossy. I had a lot going on. My husband was gone all the time. Work every day, which is good. I was a stay-at-home mom, but I was a stay-at-home mom with a medically fragile kid. And so there was everybody and anybody of every type of education well above mine. And they didn't even know my name. They just called me mom, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, oh, no. And I was also raised that I could be whatever I wanted to be. I was raised with self-confidence, self-esteem. I didn't, you don't like me, well then bye-bye, but so if my husband and I disagree and we butt heads in we try to get it to be a constructive way. And it's not about me not seeing him as a man or him not behaving as a man. He is very, very much. I told him, I said, you run this house. This is your house, and I am yours, and you are mine, but, and I did all the very, very typical housewifey things. I got to be a stay-at-home mom my whole life. And he saw it that way too, that he wanted to be the provider, the protector, all of that. And it's just that I have a much more outgoing, he has more of an introverted personality and mine's a little more extroverted. So
yeah,
that's why I say it really does. It comes down to preferences because some things are just, some things are in that 20% and some things are in that 80%. And you just got to figure out for yourself, what is your 80 and what is the 20.
And I want to say, I grew up seeing my grandmother, who was very submissive. Of course, she comes from another time, and my grandfather was a difficult man. I wouldn't have been able to do it. I would have said, leave. I just do this. But my grandmother was very, very submissive. And I'm not talking about me having a problem with being submissive. He was harsh on her. He was very hard on her.
Right.
And my mother-in-law is very submissive. They would just, yes. And they had the food ready and everything. My mother was the opposite. She was like, I'm not doing it. By the time I got to my mama, she was like, no. But I tried, and I was a little difficult at the beginning because I was like a new believer, and I just getting prayer through prayer and everything, just learn not to get so up in my feelings about everything, and just being mature minded and understanding there are differences between men and women. Men, when they're operating in their masculinity the way God made them to, they are made to protect and provide for the executive decisions. It's not like he's being mean. It's just that you guys come together, you discuss it, and then he makes the final decision on what you both are okay with. I tell my leaders, I said, when people need their space, give them their space. And your dad is the man of this house. And my youngest, she'll be like, yes, cause he's the man of the house. She's 20, the other one's 23. So yeah, I raising them to know how to cook, to have good everything about yourself. Keep your hygiene, keep yourself together, go out of the house and things way, respectful, be well read, easy to get along with, not a pushover, but like don't be difficult, you know. And my oldest one, she is real easy. Anybody get her is gonna be like, wow, this is like a walk in the park. Working on it.
And don't be unforgiving. Don't be unforgiving. Be willing also to repent, to say you're sorry. You know, he brought up the issue of not having a hard woman, but another issue, with the black women is, from what I have encountered, is the willingness to apologize. If you're wrong, you're wrong. Just say you're sorry. I'm not going to hold it over your head. But also, if I mess up, can we not talk about it for 3 years? I mean, what are we doing here? I mean, come on. I already said I said I'm sorry in the first 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Well, we got to talk about it for 3 years.
So,
Can't do that.
I will say my husband said about me, he said, one thing about you is you are willing to apologize, because I will be straight up transparent. I do this on my channel. I'm like, look, my other channel, I say, and I'll say it on this channel, that I will say, you know what, I did some stupid stuff. I would say I was dumb. I would just talk about myself and I apologize. I repented and I made a mistake, because I choose to, by the grace of God, am transparent, and that's just how I do things. I mean, just how I am. That's how God made me. I had to grow into that. And I'm very thankful for that, because my husband says he's extremely happy. So I'm, we happy. We happy, but
He extremely happy.
he said he extremely happy.
Amen.
He told me, he said, you got the best thing happened to me. Oh, I'm so glad you married me. He'll still say it.
How long have you guys been married, Linda B?
24 years last month.
Oh wow, congratulations on that.
You need to teach some classes. See, that's one of the big things, and I talk about that a lot on my channel, is that we don't have enough women that are seasoned women, okay, that have been doing it a long time, telling and being willing to communicate these truths to younger women. And a lot of times they're scared, and especially with black women. And like I said, I'm just going to keep it real. Some of these older black women or more seasoned black women may go to a younger black woman, and then they get the attitude and get the look and all that, all that kind of stuff like that. And so they're like, I don't want to talk to this person because they're not willing to hear. And we just got to have more women like yourself, Linda, that's going out and telling these people, hey, you got to think. You got to think, because the fact of the matter is this: the marriage rate in the black community, last time I heard, was 34%. It used to be before the 60s, and even in the early 1900s, 80+%. As a matter of fact, blacks were getting married more than any other group. Okay. But now all of a sudden it's the lowest group. And they've already shown through studies that if you are having children and don't have the mother and the father and all this stuff like this, there's a high chance that you're going to be in prison or some other problem that you're going to end up having. So this is a big issue. This is a huge issue in the black community. And it's not being taken seriously. And even though we say that we're conservative and we're churchy and go to church, there's not enough churches preaching and teaching about this stuff. They want to talk about empowerment. And I'm just going to say this: women are already empowered. I already told y'all what happened to Adam. She was so powerful that she was able to convince this man to say, no, I give it all up. I don't need the garden. I don't need none of it. I gotta go with my wife.
He listened to it when they got kicked out. I know he was like, I shouldn't have listened to you.
Hey, exactly. But obviously she had some type of power. Shoot, what you talking about? Anyway.
I know, but I gotta say this. I will say that based on my experience, I know of women, Black women, that do fit the negative stereotype, but I gotta say this, and I'm not just making this up. I know a lot of Black women that don't fit that negative stereotype. They're
Amen.
soft, they're
Amen.
submissive, based on who I'm around. Maybe it's just where I live. I don't know. But I think the ones that are bad always end up on social media. Always saying, "Oh, you invited me to get my hair done. You invite me to dinner. You got to pay for my hair, my nails, and you got to pay for my 5 kids to eat too. They got to eat. You can't just invite me to dinner. They got to eat too." I'm like, Lord have mercy. Where y'all get these videos from? Stop it.
The Cheesecake Factory is not a good enough place for a first date.
So it's crazy because this is probably in my lifetime. I don't think I can ever remember a time where there was so many, even non-blacks that were single, but more so in the Black community. I don't think I've ever remember seeing this many single women, and none of them can get a dude. You know, I'm not. You know, no one's perfect out in these streets. I'm not perfect, but I'm one of the best. But you know, it's funny because on social media, listen, man, that confidence that you talk about,
He knows what it is.
You know that you will be faithful to her and treat her right.
I know I'm a good dude. That's why I'm still single, because I'm not just gonna give it to just anybody. But you know, it's funny you was talking about the whole social media. I just ran across, and I'm like 25 minutes from Uptown Charlotte, and I saw this woman on TikTok. Some creator was doing a reaction to her TikTok, and she was talking about a speed dating event in Charlotte, and I'm like, oh wow, I don't go outside much, so I wouldn't have heard of it, nor would I have gone if I did. But you know, her issue was that there were 10 dudes and like 85 women, and one of the things that caught my attention was the fact that when she basically described her impression of the dudes that were there, she already disqualified like 9 of them. So my thing is, you know, a lot of times, you know, society and whatever it is has women with these unrealistic expectations because every dude has to be 6 foot and up. First of all, statistically speaking,
that ain't true.
When you narrow it all the way down, you're probably trying to get 1%. So let's say 80% of women is trying to get 1% of men. It ain't that 12% that everybody's talking about, because half of them married, the other half of them gay, and then the other half of them don't want you because he got to like you back. You know what I'm saying? So it's a big deal. It's like, yo, y'all chasing the same dude and y'all forgetting the main piece. He has to like you. And if he got to know you, he's probably not, because of this idiocy. You know, and it's sad because I don't remember it ever being like this. I remember when quote unquote black love was a thing. And I'm not trying to make this black and white, because after, you know, listen, at the end of the day, as much as I like black women, if the right white woman gets my attention, it's over. But you know, I remember when that was a thing, when it was like, it was really highly sought after to find like what real love was, and people really looked at it as a super positive, where now everybody wants to get, you know, something out of it. And dudes don't not want to get married. They just don't want to get divorced.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? They don't want to not get married. They want to get married. They just don't want to get divorced.
They don't want to be paying that $1,500. They don't want to pay that $1,500.
We're not incentivized to get married.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I've been divorced twice. I can tell you.
Yeah. I divorced my older 3 children's father, and the middle one, he's like, why would I get married when she could just take 50% of everything I have? And I said, that is talking about getting married to end up divorced. I said, you can't have that mindset. I said, I didn't marry your dad thinking I was ever going to get divorced. I said, but then I also didn't marry your dad thinking I was ever going to have to be a married single mother either, you know, and there are all kinds of things can occur, but you marry somebody not, I mean, when you know it's all, you know, what it should be, and it's reciprocal, and if divorce sometimes happens. sometimes happens, and it can happen for all kinds of reasons, but that can't be why you do or don't get married, you know?
Right. And I want to bring
Well,
up,
Linda,
I'm sorry.
okay, I was going to say something to what you had brought up. You know, you had said that there's a lot of women, Black women, that are these, very sweet, very kind types.
Yes, they can
But
cook and everything.
exactly. But here's the problem, and I'm just going to say this is just like we were talking about the social media, the advertisement, though, the promotion is of women,
the
Black
face of
women
it.
that are not
Yes,
that way. And
that's
so
what I
when you
said.
got men seeing that, you're
The
like,
ghetto
man,
ones are getting the attention. The ghetto
Well,
ones.
it's the face. It's the face of it. You see it everywhere.
Right.
If you see it everywhere, you
Right.
think that's how it is. It's the same thing when boys think when women are quote unquote overly sexualized on television. Young men grow up to think that that's what their wife or their girlfriend ought to look like or ought to be like, or it's all whatever's pushed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know,
She
that's
ain't got to be in the kitchen butt naked with an apron on. I mean, I'll take that, but she don't
Well,
have
that'd
to
be
have
nice.
that. As long as she know how to make
Oh,
grits,
that'd
I'm
be
good.
as long as you don't expect that every day.
Well, I would just say, I mean, I don't know. It seems like the bad of everything gets the attention, and
Yeah.
Yes.
with Black folks, the ghetto guy, thug guys with the grill and with his pants sagging. He don't know, he doesn't have a belt, couldn't find one if he wanted to. And the Black women with the weave and the tats and out here fighting in the streets, getting her wig snatched off. That's what you see promoted. But that is just media. I have an issue with media anyway. I talk about
Same.
how they portray Black people anyway, and they just negative stuff. I'm like, the people I know, I'm sorry, I don't know anybody like that. We're all married. We are submit to our husbands. We bring these issues to our husband. We just don't spend money and treat them any kind of way. We take care of our children. We take care of our aging parents. We go to church. We pray. We try to do all the things. So I mean, maybe it's because I'm talking about women over 35, but maybe it's different for people over 30. Maybe they're the ones. Maybe that's it. I don't know. I don't know.
Nah.
But then we've got society telling women they got to have a career, and then they're putting off motherhood and marriage until they're in their 30s. And then we got all this garbage. I'm going to get in my soapbox a little bit. We got all this garbage in our medicine and in our foods and whatever, messing with our hormones. And all of a sudden, she can't get pregnant. Is it her? Is it him? And then what? I regret getting married. I do regret getting married at 19. Now, I thought that was I now think that was awfully young. I did know my husband 3 years by then, but I was a young mom. I had energy for those kids, and by the time I ended up divorced and remarried, I was still young enough to have another child. Then my husband didn't have any. My new husband didn't have any children, and I did the whole going to church, being the good housewife. I said what I wanted to say. I didn't say it in a shitty way. Excuse me.
It's okay.
In a bad way.
But Renee, was it that you were too young, and excuse what I say here, get context, or was it that you were too dumb at that time? Too young.
I said, well, actually, usually I say young and dumb.
Okay.
Because I ignored a lot. In hindsight, I can look back and see a lot of things that I should have seen, and I did not or I ignored it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. When I was 20 when I got married, and so I was 19 when my oldest daughter was conceived. And my parents, being old school country parents, when I called them and told them, they gave me the whole, well, you know what you need to do.
Yeah, that's
it was that whole you know what you need to do. And not to mention her, my kid's mom, her parents were Holy Ghost filled and fire baptized people. So that was a shotgun wedding as far as I was concerned. I was young. My whole 20s I was married.
Yeah.
So.
Well, guys, we're going to wrap this up. I just want to allow each of you to give me your last words when it comes to a man finding a good woman. We're particularly talking about Black folks, but this could apply to anyone. So, Renee Suzanne, I'm going to start with you.
Hold on, I'm sorry, I just got distracted by the chat. Woo. Um uh I'm just going to go back to I think what the beginning of what I said. I people are going to be people. Human beings are going to be human beings. We're wired to have preferences of all kinds. Personality preferences, who we get along with as a friend versus who we might actually get along with as a spouse. It, I don't think I don't know that color has anything to do with any of it, unless it's a preference.
Yeah. All right. Well, Kev.
All right. Well, here's the deal. Good black men actually do want good, godly black women. They
Okay.
do. And we hope that they are. But if all we see and all that is promoted, and a lot of the time what we encounter, whether we're going through a drive-through at the McDonald's, or whether we're in the Walmart, trying to get some help, and instead of help, all that stuff, and or wherever you are, if you're not getting that good godly black woman, then a man at some point is going to say, you know what? I got to get my passport ready, and I got to find a wife. Proverbs says, he that findeth a wife. And look at what is denoting. It's a wife. That means you're already wifing. It didn't say he that finds a woman. See, you see that? It says he that finds a wife. That means you're already doing
wife
the
material
things that a wife would do. You see? So one of y'all talked about how you're showing your daughters how to cook and clean, all that kind of stuff like that. A lot of these women today, unfortunately, or some of them, especially in the black community, they shun that. They look negatively against that. When I was had my daughters growing up, I would send them off to these supposedly things that were going to help them to be better women, and they're teaching them all of these principles I didn't even know about until later. So the bottom line is, we are looking for good black women, but they got to be godly. They got to do it the Bible's way. If you want a good black man, if you want a high value black man, if you want a higher value black, whatever you want, you know what? You need to put your best foot forward and stop trying to be so picky, where you're picking yourself out of this great selection of black men. So that's what I would leave it at.
Okay, and MJ.
Wow, Kev, you should have closed that one out, man. It's time for the benediction
Done.
after that. Wow. No, and first of all, thank you, Linda B, for having us on. I know I speak for everybody when I say that. But I as a single black man, mature man, who has a preference for black or African American women, I feel like I think the expectations need to be set properly, and I think people need to first take a step back and look in the mirror, and check themselves before they even approach even the idea of it, because I think at the end of the day, people just really aren't ready for it. So at the end of the day, will I change my preferences? It's likely. I don't know if it'll happen, but it's likely. Otherwise,
you don't know.
Single because otherwise I'll be single forever at this rate. And that's
well,
not
I used to think, oh, I love men with blonde hair and this, that. I both my husbands, brown hair, green eyes, nowhere near. And then I ended up with a redheaded son out of this last, this marriage. There's just no, there's things you think you like, there's things you think are your preferences too, until you meet the right person. And
Yeah.
then you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah, and Kevin actually started out with that, and when he said that it's not about the color of the person, it's about
Mhm.
having the right person.
The right person.
Yes.
Yes,
And that
right.
resonates. That resonates.
Resonates.
So I mean, that is a lot to think about.
Yep. Well, thank you guys so much for joining me. And I just will put the links to everyone's YouTube channel in my description box below. We've got Renee Suzanne of Renee Suzanne. We have Mark Johnson of WTF For Real and Kev Inver, aka Kevin Zachary of The Real Fight 7. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. You all be blessed. Until next time. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye. Mwah.
That's it for today's show. Thank you guys for joining me here tonight. The links will be in the description. You all be blessed. And until next time.